So, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Sachin Vani. I am a GI surgeon practicing in Thane. So, nowadays everybody is facing COVID issues. All the doctors are treating COVID. So, I think I would like to have this as an interactive session because maybe as a general practitioner, your experience must be more first-hand experience in dealing with COVID patients. Mine must be a secondary or a third experience for the same patient which you must be referring. I'll share my surgical issues, but the common issues which you are facing, you can definitely interact. Once I'm done with the lecture, we can have, my lecture will be only for 15 minutes. Rest of the time I'll discuss with each of you. You can just unmute yourself and ask the questions. Should I start the lecture?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah.
Okay. So the topic, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So today's topic is, just a second, let me adjust things. Today's topic is corona related GI problems. What GI problems is everybody facing in corona times? That is the topic today. So I'll start my lecture. Just give me 5 minutes. I'll adjust. So as everybody knows me very well, and I also know most of the doctors who are coming on this panel because I've met them personally, each of them, and must have met in seminars. So today's topic is corona-related GI problems because most of the respiratory problems you must be knowing. Each of one of you must be knowing all the respiratory issues, but there are some GI issues which I am coming across, which are special, which are advanced problems which I am facing in COVID times regarding GI issues. So there are a lot of myths about COVID. So general myths are there. I'll try to clear each of them. So what are the patients I'm seeing? What are the COVID issues which I'm seeing in my OPD practice and then IPD practice? First thing which I'm facing is diarrhea. Diarrhea is becoming very common. So is the virus coming in the feces? So diarrhea, there can be many reasons of diarrhea, but in COVID times, what I am facing is they're mostly in the post-COVID period when the patient has recovered. It's a secretory type of a diarrhea where you have 7 to 8 or 10 motions every day. It's mostly it is antibiotic induced diarrhea, which the patients are taking in the healthcare centers or hospitals where they're getting treated. But some are coming on OPD basis who have not been tested COVID positive. Now these problems are related to general allergic gastroenteritis, which we commonly face with change of season. Now we have moved from rainy season to a winter season. So whenever there is change in season, there is always allergic respiratory and GI issues setting up. So that is second reason. COVID is one reason. Third is, as I told, antibiotic induced those who are getting treated in COVID centers. There are multiple reasons for diarrhea, but these three are commonly which are coming to me. How are the patients coming to me? They are coming with plain secretory diarrhea, not blood in stools. They're usually associated with abdominal cramps and vomiting. Either they have not tested themselves for COVID or they have suffered COVID and come to me. So if they have not tested for COVID, if they are also having fever or some respiratory issues, I ask them to go and test. I ask them and get a COVID PCR test done, which is more specific, more sensitive, less false negatives, nearly zero false positives. So diarrhea is a very common presentation of COVID-19 disease. A lot of people are asymptomatic, only suffering diarrhea, not getting tested, and landing up straight in the hospital on 7th or 8th day with COVID-related lung issue where the lung has suffered severe damage because of COVID. But they didn't have any other symptoms of COVID except diarrhea, which they neglected, thinking that is a routine gastroenteritis, and are landing up in directly in the hospital, either in a HDU or in a ICU. So diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal cramps can be routine or it still can be a COVID disease. The further thing which I am getting in all this is a bowel gangrene. As you know, COVID is it's a thrombogenic condition where the vessels are getting blocked. So patients are suffering from stroke, patients are suffering from heart disease, ischemic heart disease, they are suffering from pulmonary thrombosis, they are suffering from vascular episodes, vascular complications of the intestines and the abdomen also. So a lot of patients are coming with complicated appendicitis to me, complicated cholecystitis, bowel gangrene, because the vessels of the intestines are getting COVID related arthritis, leading to blockage of the vessels and leading to severe complications of the bowel. So I operated 3 patients of bowel gangrene where there were SMV or SMA thrombosis, where I had to resect the bowel, and when we had sent COVID test, it was positive, and there was no other history to suspect why the bowel gangrene happened. And why I'm facing appendicitis complicated, I mean to say complicated means where there are perforations, abscess related to appendix, where there are difficult gallbladders, complicated pus-filled gallbladders, empyema gallbladder. So normally these patients will come once in a month to me, like these patients, but I am getting maybe 7 or 8 cases of these in a month, because the simple reason is people are getting afraid when they get pain in abdomen to go and get tested, either get a sonography done or some other test done. So they are not reaching the hospital, and therefore they are coming with the complications of the same issue which would have been easily tackled in non-COVID times. So it may be vascular episode, but it is mainly because neglect by the patient during a COVID period, not doing sonography, not getting tested, and therefore landing up with severe complicated appendicitis or cholecystitis. So it becomes a very difficult task to do laparoscopic surgeries for these people. And if you do COVID test, 50% will come positive for COVID, maybe lesser will come positive, come negative. So these 3 bowel complications may be related to COVID, but there may also be because of delay to reach a doctor because of COVID. How to diagnose, as I said, when you get diarrhea, when you get abdominal pain, when you get vomiting, how to diagnose these conditions. So please don't share anybody. Let me share the screen.
Somebody.
Yeah.
Pandurang was.
So let me share the screen. Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah. So how to diagnose this? How to diagnose these conditions early? So best is to see your general practitioner. Go to him. All the general practitioners are working, or most of them have started working. There is also one other way of communicating with your general practitioner is by video consultation. Of course, physical examination is necessary, but at least a video consultation to achieve a provisional diagnosis, get the test done, and then you can see the specialist or the general practitioner in person. So how to diagnose, first of all, whether it is COVID related or not, that we should be very careful nowadays, because if you are suffering from COVID and you are having symptoms, if you don't do a COVID test, you may be a asymptomatic carrier and you can give COVID to all your family members. So better, when you have any of the symptoms of COVID respiratory or GI related problems, first do a COVID PCR test. Don't rely on rapid antigen kit test, because we are seeing 50 to 60% of COVID positive patients are landing up with negative results because they are not very specific. Though they are done free of cost, but they are not very specific. And COVID-19 PCR test, which started with 4,500 rupees per test, now has come down to 1,800 rupees per test. So government has subsidized that very well, and so no harm in spending that amount for our own benefit. Do we do stool test in a diarrhea to search for the viral RNA? It has been found that most of these stool tests will come negative, and viral RNA to do on a stool test is not very commonly done. It's a very rare test. It has to go in a metropolis or suburban lab, and finding that is not going to change the diagnosis. If you do a PCR COVID test, that's good enough. So no need of doing a viral RNA from the stool, whether we have diarrhea, are the virus present in the stool. If it is present in the stool, definitely it will be present in your COVID-19 PCR test as well. Now, a lot of people are asking me, are they giving false positive results in a COVID-19 PCR? I don't think so, because COVID-19 is a virus. They take your nasal swab, oropharyngeal swab, and look under the microscope whether you have that virus or not. If it is seen on the microscope, definitely you have the virus. So false positives, I don't believe anybody is giving, at least in Maharashtra. But false negatives, yes, you can miss a virus if you are in the pre-symptomatic stage, or you have passed the stage of you are cured from the COVID, then you can have a false negative. Antibody kit test, suppose somebody has suffered COVID and has post-COVID diarrhea, post-COVID symptoms. A lot of people are getting post-COVID symptoms. I'll come to that. So how to diagnose whether that was because of COVID or not? Because many people don't do COVID test when they had the symptoms. So how to diagnose whether we had some fever, we had respiratory infection, we didn't go to the doctor, we didn't do COVID test, but after 2 months we start having diarrhea. So was that a COVID induced diarrhea or it was something else? You can do antibody test. So antibody test has IgG, IgM. IgM, if it is positive, tells you you are having the coronavirus right now in your body. IgG positive tells you that you have suffered the coronavirus. Now you are asymptomatic and you had COVID maybe a month or 2 months back. You can safely do a COVID antibody test. Either you are positive to start with 2 months back, or you are suspected positive but you didn't land up with the COVID-19 PCR. D-dimer profile. So those who get COVID respiratory, they get thrombophilia. Thus we have to do a thrombocoagulation profile called a D-dimer profile, where there are multiple tests: ferritin, fibrinogen, D-dimer levels, PTINR, PTT, to know whether is the blood thick or thin in our body. So normally a lot of people are doing, I'll come to the problem how to diagnose all these things in the next slide. So just to give a brief of how it started, in late December 2019, the first case of SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 was reported in Wuhan, China. So a lot of there are hypotheses. It started in China. Was it a man-made virus? No answers on that. We'll not go to that. So respiratory tract manifestations are most commonly reported, but emerging data is also showing that gastrointestinal tract and liver might be affected by COVID, because they express the same ACE2 receptor, which is a major receptor for attachment of this virus to the respiratory cells. So these receptors are all there in GI cells, therefore you are getting diarrhea, and liver cells, and therefore you are getting change of your liver function test. So definitely it can affect the other systems also. The rest of the symptoms like CNS, rest of the organs like CNS, kidney, or spine, other organs are not directly getting affected, but they are the byproducts of the disease. I mean to say, you can get stroke, but not that the virus is present in your brain. You can get stroke because the brain vessels are getting blocked because of generalized thick blood or thrombogenic condition of the virus. So strokes, heart attacks are not a direct effect of the virus, but they are the byproducts of the systemic illness related to COVID. Some patients are coming only with GI symptoms. Some COVID-19 patients are coming with severe GI pain. Abdominal cramps, that is the only symptom they're having. You need to be cautious in not just giving painkillers, but to treating this. This may be COVID, and then they'll start having vomiting, diarrhea. It may be simple food infection also. But don't neglect COVID. That's what I mean to say. Get it tested. No harm in getting a test of a single person. If that person is positive, you can test the whole family later. So don't neglect abdominal pain. It can be, I saw a patient who came with severe abdominal pain, and in 2 days it was given some painkillers by a local doctor, but after 2 days came with a SM with thrombosis. That was a vascular episode. So vascular episode will be very, very severe abdominal pain, not relieved by any painkillers, not even by IV analgesic, because it's a vascular episode, SM with thrombosis, portal with thrombosis. And after you come after 2 days, the bowel must have got gangrenous by that time. So I operated one patient who was taking her husband for dialysis every day. She got infected. So got severe abdominal pain, but since her husband was undergoing dialysis, she could not do her test. And then after 2 days, she got admitted hypotension, tachycardia, and found on CT imaging that the SMV had got blocked and there was bowel gangrene. We had to resect a bowel, do a laparotomy, give her new anastomosis. A lot of trouble for the patient. Now she'll be on at least 6 months for a anticoagulation therapy. Warfarin need to be given because her vessels had got blocked. So simple COVID test can prevent all these problems, and timely treatment can prevent all these problems. So this was the case for one more male patient I had seen, 45-year, acute onset diarrhea, high grade hypovolemia, blood in stools, severe abdominal pain, sepsis, went in sepsis, abdomen findings, distended gallbladder, tachycardia, hypotension. So we screened, got a CT scan done. It was SMV thrombosis, and we operated, did a jejunal resection. So why are vascular problems very common in COVID? Because blood becomes very thick. It's a thrombogenic condition. So we are seeing SMV thrombosis. We are seeing ileocolic vein thrombosis leading to appendicitis, leading to bad gangrenous appendicitis. We are seeing bowel gangrenes. We are seeing pulmonary artery thrombosis, strokes, ischemic heart attacks, because all the vessels are getting blocked in this condition. A lot of people who are in ICU and may suffer these problems may not survive the episode, can be fatal. But those who are surviving the COVID respiratory virus and reaching home, we have to keep a watch on these things, which may prop up in the next 2 to 3 months after you are discharged from the hospital. Some people are developing strictures, long-term strictures after 3 months. So we have to diagnose it on small bowel enema where a tube is put in the intestine and the bowel is distended with contrast. And so you can see there are 2 pictures where you can see strictures. There is a bowel loop. You can see the arrows and there is a narrowing there. Now this is because SMV thrombosis which had happened during the COVID, but the vessels recanalized, and then after 2 months this patient developed severe abdominal pain. Investigator found a stricture of the small bowel. You can see this. So this is what is being picked up in post-COVID patients. You know the treatment, standard treatment, remdesivir, tocilizumab, steroids, plasma therapy. Out of this, steroids are the only thing which are actually helping the patient, and blood thinners. I forgot to add heparin, blood thinners. These are two documented things which are working. Remdesivir is working. Who have high viral loads, remdesivir is found to have some role. But tocilizumab, plasma therapy are all controversial. Hello. So all other things are very controversial. Plasma therapy is helping only mild cases. They are not very useful in severe cases. No good data available to suggest that plasma therapy is saving patients. Remdesivir has some data. Tocilizumab has not found to have any good effects. Steroids are the choice of treatment, and blood thinners. Steroids and blood thinners have proven data of helping COVID patients tackle all the crises. Post-COVID syndrome, people are getting brain fogs. Some people are, now it's called happy COVID syndrome. I don't know what they call brain fogs. They are getting weird experiences because the frontal lobe vessels are supposedly getting blocked, and either they are very happy or they are crying, they are depressed. So anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, decreased quality of life because you are restrained in a lockdown, you're restrained at your home, you're not allowed to go. So these are all post-COVID syndromes. The median time from onset to clinical recovery for mild cases is 2 weeks, but it can be 3 to 6 weeks post-discharge for a severe or a critical disease. So these critical patients will remain in the hospital for 3 to 4 weeks or maybe more. And then at home also, they will not be able to do their normal routine activities for at least 3 to 6 weeks or more. Some people are requiring 3 to 4 months for complete recovery. There are also other myths associated with this. Let me clear that point by point. People infected with COVID-19 can still infect others after they stop feeling sick. So these patients post-discharge should be at home at least for 2 weeks after the symptoms have disappeared, say fever, cough, coryza, because they still can keep infecting people around. So nobody knows when the virus is out of your body, but roughly you have to isolate at least for 2 weeks post-discharge or post-symptoms. Nobody is testing at discharge. None of the hospitals are checking your COVID at discharge. You can do a COVID test after 2 weeks, but you can safely do a COVID antibody test after 2 to 3 weeks and see whether you have developed the antibodies. If you have developed the antibodies, then you are at least non-infective to others. And even if you get a second infection, you are still protected from that. Visitors should not be allowed until the end of this period. It is safer for you and safer for them also. A lot of people are going and meeting their relatives post discharge from the hospital. A bad practice to do. You should not visit a post-COVID patient because they may keep infecting the family members, and the family members can be the carriers and infect you. So don't allow visitors at home, and don't visit any post-COVID patient. I've seen people getting infected after they gone and met the COVID relatives, and they themselves have got admitted later. It's highly unlikely that people can contract COVID from food or food packaging, but as COVID is a respiratory illness, but you should be careful. You should not order food from outside till it's very essential or necessary. The carrier of the food, the person who is delivering you food, can pass on the virus to you. This person, the primary transmission is through person to person contact, and only through respiratory droplets. Even the fomites, like wiping the mobile, using sanitizer on mobiles, has not found to be very effective. The mobiles are getting damaged. Don't wipe your mobile. At the most, you can use a plastic sheet over the mobile, and you can sanitize the plastic sheet. Don't sanitize your mobile phones. Very dangerous. The risk of catching COVID-19 from the feces of an infected person appears to be low, so no need to use separate washrooms. Of course, you should isolate the patient, but no need to use separate washrooms. While initial investigations suggested the virus may be present in feces, but this is not a main transmission modality. Alcohol does not protect against COVID-19, so don't go looking for alcohol. The alcohol which is present in the sanitizer is 90 to 99% of alcohol. The alcohol which is consumed is around 7 to 45%. So that doesn't kill the virus. So don't look for alcohol as a treatment modality. No, it's wrong. People have drunk sanitizers during the lockdown period and they have died because that was 99% or 90% alcohol. Dangerous for the body. Exposing yourself to the sun or temperatures higher than 25 degrees Celsius does not protect you from COVID-19. So heat, cold has not found to be protective. So COVID has not disappeared in summer, not disappeared in rainy season. It will not disappear in the winter. Rather, winter will have more COVID cases because you're more prone for allergies. So you may have the severe form of the virus. Thank you. So we can open the discussion. I would like to have a
please unmute everybody.
Everybody can unmute, but raise your hand and ask me the question so that I can interact. And you can remove your photographs and can come in person on the screen so that I know whom I'm speaking to. Yeah, you can remove the photographs and come back on screen. And you can raise your hand and ask questions. We can have a free discussion because I feel you may be having more experience in dealing primarily with the COVID patients than me. I'm done with the talk. If you have any questions related to this, you can start the discussion. Dr. Snehal Thakkar, can we start?
Yes, sir.
So what's the experience, sir? How many patients you have seen? Have you done online consultations? Have you done in-person consultations?
No, sir, I've been doing only online consultations.
Only online consultation. So what are you finding? How was this talk related to GI? We'll discuss GI because respiratory is a big topic and I'm not an expert on respiratory problems. So anything related to GI, any problems you're facing in your practice, you can ask me. I am seeing Dr. Ram Mali also, that he has a vast experience in all these things. Namaskar, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. GI symptoms are there, but mostly whatever patients of mine are admitted, they go to the hospital and then we lose the track.
Yeah.
And, but in initial stages, yes, some stomach upset, some acidity-like thing, some vomiting, that kind of rarely are there. And those patients whom I have treated at home quarantine, in them, yes, they report some GI disturbances. But since they are mild patients, even their GI problems are also mild. So we really don't know what is happening to them. Yes, those who come back sometimes from hospital, they come back with the feedback and all. They say that somebody developed diarrhea or somebody developed some abdominal pain. But apart from that, sir, whatever we are encountering is essentially mild symptoms.
Are you seeing post-COVID syndrome patients, like after 2 months they're getting diarrhea?
No, sir. I have not seen
So the
any.
main reason for I am getting a lot of OPD where patients come with severe acidity and sometimes blood vomiting. The main reason for this is this Corona Kada which people are drinking.
Yeah.
Now this Corona Kada, what is the philosophy behind drinking this Corona Kada? I'll tell you what is the philosophy. There are two advantages. One is they thin your blood, so you're not getting the hyper. I told you COVID is a thrombogenic condition, so blood is remaining thin, and you may not get the complications associated with COVID. That is one advantage. Second advantage, it's a immunity booster. It will boost your immunity so you can fight the COVID better. But see, it has to be taken by from a logical expert, from a Ayurveda specialist, or from a person who is expert in this to prepare this kada. A lot of people are making homemade kadas. Now they are so toxic to your gut that you are getting severe gastritis. People are developing gastric ulcers, duodenal ulcers. They're vomiting blood for two reasons: because they are getting ulcers because of these irritations of the kada, and second, their blood is getting thin because of this kada, and therefore those ulcers which should not bleed are bleeding heavily. So I encountered 3 to 4 GI bleeds which had to be tackled endoscopically. We had to tell them that please stop these kadas. They are not. Achha, once you are done with COVID, you have got COVID syndrome. What is the need of drinking kada? Because you already have antibodies now.
Absolutely,
So
yes.
I am not against kada, but it has to be recommended by a physician to be prepared in the right quantities, to be taken with antacids if required, and to be taken a right dose. Maybe a glass in a day. People are drinking morning, afternoon, evening, 3 times a day, very spicy. Uh, they're putting cardamoms and so many things in that. There's no proof. There's no proof that they have helped people.
Sir, can I interrupt you? These things
Yes,
are
sir. Yes,
more, more this thing because of the social media. Every day, one and other person sharing their experience. I have taken this paper. I have
yes,
taken this paper, and I got relieved, and I got less sort of symptoms. Or many daily. I think there are many updates of this thing.
yes, yes, yes,
Ever have got COVID and
yes,
recovered from the things they are claiming effect is
yes,
due
yes,
there, what you rightly said, sir, but it has to be taken in proper quantity with a proper measurement. So
yes, yes,
maybe as per your experience the GI bleed because lot many people let cardamom and black
yes,
pepper, it
yes.
means it is sold like anything. So that could be a reason, but I think social media is the main culprit to
So I'll come to
go
that.
into this.
So
Yeah.
this is Dr.
Well,
Jyoti Bhojne. So I introduce you when you talk. Dr. Jyoti Bhojne just spoke now. So, ma'am, welcome. So what I feel it should be given by a practitioner who is experienced in prescribing these things. I am allopathy, so I'll not be able to prescribe a kada. But it is good. It boosts your immunity and gives you a blood thinning property. But it has to be used judiciously.
judicious.
WhatsApp
Shall I add
forward.
few words to it, sir?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I am Dr. Khatavkar
Yes, sir.
from
Namaskar.
Airoli, Mumbai.
Yes,
First of all, let us congratulate Dr. Jyoti Bhojne. She has recovered from the COVID, and it is
yes,
directly
yes,
from the
yes.
horse's mouth.
Yes,
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
and we will congratulate all the COVID warriors who are recovered and again resumed to the work also.
and also those who have helped the patients recover. That's very
Yes,
important.
yes.
All of these
So,
practitioners.
so these are directly from the horse's mouth. These are those people have experienced.
Yes,
Uh, Apart from the Ayush Kada and Ayush Churna, which are supposed to be immunity booster, Ayush department has displayed a guideline on 6th of October. It is the latest
okay,
guideline where they tell Ayush Kada and Guduchi and other Churnas. It should be taken in proper quantities and under supervision or advice of a proper licensed Ayush doctor and not
yes,
from a layman and anything.
yes,
Unfortunately, we don't have that particular regulation, particularly on Ayush medicines. It is very bad luck.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
See, these kadas are not bad, but the way they are given, especially these WhatsApp forwards, they are destroying people's sanctity. They are fear. Corona should not be feared. See, 90 to 95% will be mild cases out of 100 cases. Suppose you get that 5% will suffer. You can check the mortality rates; they are hardly 1 to 2%. And they must be less also because of underreporting. But roughly you can say mortality is 1 to 2%. So 98% people. So a lot of people are dying in the hospital because they're getting depressed. They are feeling that they will not be able to recover. So that's the one reason they are not recovering the way they should recover. So it's a play between the virus and the immunity. The virus is poor in your body, the virus will win. But if your immunity is strong, you will win. So it's a play between virus and the immunity. Steroids and blood thinners are the only two medicines which have helped. I don't think anything else has helped. Remdesivir in some maybe moderate cases, but in severe cases, even remdesivir doesn't help.
All the guidelines are changing, right?
All
From
the guidelines-
hydroxychloroquine to remdesivir and even tocilizumab, everything is changing. What is
Yes.
your opinion about that?
Sir, what I feel, WHO, when they started, they should have started giving guidelines properly. They must have done a good job. I don't say that. But now, first they recommended hydroxychloroquine, then they said it's not useful. They recommended remdesivir, and after in October, they said remdesivir has not found to be useful. So what happens? The people who are buying these medicines and paying the money in black market, and they are just giving it to the hospital to use, they are not sure whether they have paid the right money for the right thing. And especially if your patient doesn't survive, then why have you spent money? And WHO putting such things after 5-6 months of treatment is confusing everybody. I don't want to comment on this, but what I feel, steroids and blood thinners are the two things which are helping, definitely helping. They are needed. Steroids are needed because they can prevent pulmonary fibrosis resulting from this virus. It can halt the inflammatory phase and not lead to fibrosis. That's the role of steroids. And blood thinners are required because people are getting arteritis, inflammation of the artery because of virus, causing blockage of the artery and therefore COVID-related vascular complications. Now, why is COVID killing? Two reasons COVID is killing: because of pulmonary complications, because of fibrosis, patient not able to get weaned out of the ventilator, one, and second, thrombosis complications like strokes, heart attacks, kidney injuries, and also pulmonary embolisms. So most of the patients are dying because of these reasons. If you divide 50, there must be 50% the fibrosis part of the lung and the vascular complications. I would rate vascular complications are killing the patient more. So all these patients should remain in blood thinner for a long time, not only in the COVID hospitalization period, but also in the post hospitalization period. And they should keep doing this D-dimer test. Obviously, they must be in a post-COVID follow-up, but D-dimers are done for at least 1 or 2 months after recovery from a sick patient coming out of the hospital. So we should concentrate on these issues and don't go by WhatsApp forwards because don't know what is that. After the government started clamping on this, so you'll notice that the WhatsApp forwards have gone down and information has come down. The admins are allowed only to put the message in the group. You can make it admin only operable groups. So after the government crackdown in August, all these WhatsApp forwards have come down and life has become more life. Yes, Dr. Mota sir is there. Lot of doctors are there. They can participate. They can unmute and participate. Dr. Ram Mari is there.
Sir,
Dr. Nandamari is there.
Sir, I have got one question regarding your
Yeah.
talk. Can we have your presentation?
Yeah, I'll forward to. So what you do in this chat section, each of you doctors start writing your name, your phone number, and your email ID.
It never works, sir. It never works. If you can hand over to Snehal or anybody
Yeah,
like
I'll
Dr. Mota, they can.
I'll give,
I got one
if you can-
question about, as you said that ileocholic thrombosis. What will be the modality, like a plain CT or plain CT with contrast or HRCT is able to
So if
detect?
you are suspecting ileocholic thrombosis, first do basic sonography. So what will sonography show? It will show some bowel gases, bowel edema. It may show appendicitis. Ileocholic vein supplies the appendix. Appendicular artery is a branch of ileocholic. So if you are suspecting right-sided pains, you suspect clinical appendicitis, you first do a sonography. And if you're finding anything, and ask them to do a color study, Doppler study, venous Doppler of that sonography, USG with color venous Doppler of the vessels. Most of your ileocholic thrombosis will be picked on that. Still, your clinical findings are not matching. So you have to examine the patient clinically. This cannot go by video consultation. So if your clinical findings are not matching, just go for a CT scan, IV and oral contrast, triphasic. Triphasic means arterial, venous and delayed venous phase. This will pick up 100%.
Again, please repeat.
CT scan abdomen with IV and oral contrast. Triphasic. Triphasic means 3 phases: arterial phase, venous phase, delayed venous phase.
Okay.
So all these thrombosis can be picked up on that, and during that scan, just ask them to do a plain CT chest so that you rule out COVID. So if your abdominal scan is showing ileocholic venous thrombosis and your CT chest is showing COVID signs, just get a PCR done. Your diagnosis is in hand. You can save so many lives by just doing these 3 basic tests.
Yes, sir. One of the things.
Yeah, I
Dr. Senator, yes. My video is blocked. My video is blocked by the host. My video is blocked by the host. It's not starting. So, sir, one
Can
of
I
the
ask one
things is that
question, sir?
Yes,
when we started this pandemic, I
yeah,
think the patients and doctors had almost the same knowledge about the disease because none of us had learned anything about this
yes.
in our
So,
college days. None
see,
of us had
everybody
seen
is
any
learning.
patient previously because of that. Now, that is why, and that is why all the social media posts and all were flying thick and high because even doctors could not counter anything. Because whatever is happening, whatever is going, it was free for all. Now that gradually we have had a hang of it, we have had something in control, and that would show in the mortality rate. Initially, the mortality and morbidity was much high. And I would say that because doctors have now learnt it, in the course of the disease, the mortality, morbidity has gone down. And that is why all these social media forwards and all have now gone down because now doctors are truly in control and command, which was not there in the month of April and May
Yes.
when they started with this.
So it was a new disease for everybody. We can understand that it was a new disease for everybody. So you can see the graph of India. Those who have clamped down on these WhatsApp forwards and regulated the media, regulated the medicines, have done well. Now Maharashtra numbers are coming down very fast, and so I think we should not get a second wave. If we don't get a second wave by January, we should have the numbers under control. Dr. Jyoti, you are asking some question. Dr. Mota.
Sir, as you said, if there is a patient with a gastrointestinal complication but had not done the COVID and needs a hospitalization, because you said after the scan and that there is some guideline that you can do the RT-PCR and you can confirm whether he is COVID or non-COVID. But before that, he goes into GI complications. Is there any facility in Cure that they are admitting the patient?
So immediately they are admitted and isolated. Cure is a COVID hospital, but immediately they are admitted and isolated. They are kept in a separate room, in a separate part of the hospital, and the COVID test is sent. We get the report in 12 hours now. It was earlier it was difficult, but now we get the report in 12 hours. And if it turns to be positive, then he has to be shifted to a COVID center. If it's negative, then we can operate.
In like a patient like with the gangrene and needs operative, then what is your protocol?
We have to take all the precautions and do the surgery because that is life-saving surgery. So we have to do the surgery.
Okay, but that is also done in Cure with the
so we have to have a separate routine for that, and we can do it in Cure. No issue. Anybody? Yeah. Dr. Mota?
Dr. Mota, you mute your microphone. Dr. Mota, you mute your microphone. Yeah, better.
Dr. Mari, Dr. Anita Shinde, Dr. Randive. So you can come in the discussion.
Thank you so much, sir, for the nice lecture.
Yeah.
And discussion, of course. During Corona practice, we got a lot of experience with the patients. And right now, what you are telling, I was getting the same patients during starting time. Like patients are coming with, full of mouth ulcers and everything just because of kada. Regularly, they used to take kada twice, 6 times a day, like a mad.
That's dangerous. Yeah.
Sure, I think 2 patients are diagnosed with peptic ulcer also after COVID. Not after COVID, during COVID.
So these problems will come now. Now they will start coming. They will start coming now. because they are the post-COVID complications now. Because people are still not coming out of that CARDA thing. Of course, it may be boosting your immunity, but there are other things also which can boost your immunity, like good diet, good nutrition. If somebody is non-veg, can have 2 egg whites every day. Some can have a lot of pulses.
Along with the diet and proper sleep, you can at least postpone the COVID or whatever. You know?
Yeah, you can, or you can fight the COVID. See, COVID is a virus. Finally, you can fight the COVID better if you have good immunity. See, most of our doctors must have got COVID but not tested. So other thing you can do is you can do a COVID antibody test directly. If you feel that you had some fever, some coryza in last 6 months, get your COVID antibody test. You'll be surprised that you had suffered COVID. And once you have antibodies, you can be a bit free. You can start your clinical consultation. You can attend your general practice. Of course, take all the precautions, wear PPE kits, wear a face mask, face shield. Only thing which works, I feel, is a good 3-ply mask and a COVID shield. Some people are using helmets. That's fine.
Sir, COVID.
Yeah.
Sachin sir, Dr. Pochi here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, COVID antibodies for how many days?
The COVID antibodies, see, now this is a new virus, so nobody knows how long the antibody will stay. So typically for a mild infection, it will stay for 3 months. For a severe infection who has come from a ventilator, that will stay for 6 to 8 months. But see, the time has to pass now. We are just in the 6th or 7th month of COVID. So we should have a data of 1 to 1.5 years. For example, me, sir, take my example. I had suffered COVID in May, I was home quarantined because my OT staff had turned positive. So I did my COVID antibody in June, July, August, September, 4 months. Every month I am doing. I'm still positive. COVID antibody IgG positive.
Without symptoms, sir? Without symptoms?
I had mild sneezing, cold, but that's it. Mild fever also, yes. I didn't do PCR because my symptoms were very mild, and that time PCR was restricted to only recommend that you should have a prescription, of course, and all that. But now today, anybody can go and do a PCR. There is no need of a prescription. You can go and do a PCR. So I am testing my COVID antibody every month because I have to do surgery. I have to give service to the patients. Till date, from May I suffer. Now we are at November. 6 months I will be in November. I am still maintaining my antibodies.
That's the minor symptoms are having the antibodies for 6 months, more than 6 months.
Now
so that's a good sign, sir.
So, this is my I don't know. So some other person maybe had severe symptoms. He is doing antibody test. He is not finding antibody after 3 months also. That also will happen. So what is the data? Data is collection of around 1 lakh to 2 lakh people.
Okay.
So I can be exception, or the other person who had severe symptoms doesn't have antibodies can be exception. So we need a data of around 1 to 2 lakh or more number of people where you categorize the disease mild, moderate, severe, and how many. Now these papers will start coming in January, February. You start seeing the papers now because people must be writing the papers, must be analyzing the hospitals. They must be analyzing the maybe whole country. For example, Germany, where they have better data keeping. So they will analyze the results and they will start putting papers now. How long will the antibodies last? If you see the current papers, I have researched a lot for this topic yesterday. I went through everything. So I found that antibodies, there are not many papers who are putting that this antibodies last for so long time, 6 months, surely. But according to myself, I am reading the antibodies. I'll keep doing my antibodies. See, other problem with doctors is we'll keep getting the infections. Even if you have antibodies, you will keep getting the virus from some other patients. So that virus will keep coming in your body and you will keep producing the antibodies again and again. So I feel COVID warriors or COVID people who are with the COVID patients always will have antibody for a longer time as compared to general population.
So I've seen the patients of COVID. So I'm come to the conclusion that majority of the patients, majority of the peoples are having the antibodies. Majority of the peoples are having.
So that's called a sero survey. That is what is a sero survey is, where you randomly choose the people and check the antibodies. So in
just for before 1 week, I had tested one patient and उसको ऐसे RT-PCR नहीं करना था, वो लैब वाले ने गलती करके एंटीबॉडी किया, so that comes to above 50, 65.
Okay.
Randomly उसका चेक किया सर.
So there are two types we can do. We can do one which is a kit test, like a Prega test we do for pregnancy check. There's a kit test where you can check IgG, IgM, or that's very simple. You have to give a blood and in 5 minutes it will tell you, or you can do a titer. Now what is a titer? How many antibodies you have? So one that is close to 75 to 100 has good antibody load. Now these are the people who can donate plasma. So if you want to check your antibodies, also one thing you can do is you can donate plasma to some needy person. That time your antibody dose will be checked. And then you can also donate the plasma if your antibody titer is good. So I feel COVID warriors will have antibodies for a long time. If you are mingling with the people, especially your patients, will have antibodies for a long time until the vaccine reaches to you. I think there will be no need left for vaccine at all. You may be having good amount of antibodies. Now let the papers come on how long do they stay. Suppose before giving a vaccine, your antibody titer will be done. Before giving a vaccine, suppose you have suffered a COVID. If your antibody titer is good, suppose 7500, you will not be given a vaccine because you already have that antibody in your body.
सर आपने नया चैप्टर मत खोलो ये नया चैप्टर हो जाएगा सबके लिए everybody get confused because nowadays we are collecting the data of the health workers.
You collect.
Now it
We have
becomes
to
a new
collect the
chapter.
data, and we have to give the data to the government, and we should see that the vaccine reaches the COVID warriors first, because you are the primary people treating the patients on ground. So you need full protection. We have lost many doctors, young doctors also, to COVID. So we definitely have to collect the data and give it to the government, and we hope that I feel the vaccine will come somewhere by next June, not before that. So you should be careful.
There are news that it will be end of December. It will be there, sir.
Sir, it will not. See, that distribution process is a very big process. It will take at least 2-3 months to distribute. It will be a big process. So that's
Words on types of that vaccine and all those things. Few words.
It depends on type of vaccine. There will be multiple.
Logistics are quite
collecting the data so early.
Vaccine. There will be multiple companies coming for the vaccine.
Why they are collecting the data so early?
Sachin sir,
So we need to collect the data.
Sachin sir,
Sachin sir,
can you put some lights on plasma donations?
So plasma donation, A, you can donate a plasma if you have suffered COVID. B, you should have good antibody titer in your body. That should be at least between 75 to 100. It is done by ELISA technique. C, you should not have any severe comorbidities which you can transmit to the patient. You should not be hepatitis B, C and all those things. And you should be, ideally you should be same blood group of the patient. But
the technique.
There are plasma banks now, so you can donate any plasma.
Yeah.
Any group plasma can be given and
Sir, I had seen. सर मैं मेरा एक्सपीरियंस बताता हूँ मैं डोनेशन के लिए गया मैंने वो देखा कि वो जो मशीन है जस्ट लाइक डूइंग हेमोडायलिसिस जैसा हम लोग हेमोडायलिसिस करते सर वो वैसा ही मशीन में वो प्लाज्मा डोनेशन होता है तो इज इट इन्फेक्टिव
See, it is as infective or non-infective as your blood. See, जैसे हम प्लाज्मा देते हैं, fresh frozen plasma देते हैं, blood, it behaves similar to that. It behaves similar to that.
नहीं, but sir, जब हम उसको जब डोनेट करने को जाते हैं, what the technique they are using same like hemodialysis.
Yes.
The technique is same.
Yes.
Hemodialysis patients are getting the infections of HIV, HBsAg, all the infections from that kit. So it's like same. So we can get another infection.
No, you will not get infection. No. You will not get infection. They will screen
but the kit is the one and the same, no, sir?
They will take your plasma and they will screen the plasma for all these things and then they will give it to the donor who requires the plasma.
But the procedure of taking the plasma is one and the same as the hemodialysis.
That I may not be able to comment because I have not gone and checked this process. But the guidelines, I've gone through the guidelines of how they test, how they do, and how it should be ideally done. So no
Okay.
patient should get other infection from the same problem.
Sir, on the topic of this plasma bank,
Yeah.
now we have seen that so many patients who have recovered from COVID, very rapidly the antibodies vanish from their body.
Yes.
So from a live patient, if the antibodies are vanishing, if you collect plasma and put it into the plasma bank for some time, how long or what is the shelf life of it? Because how long the antibodies will be surviving in a blood which has been kept in the shelf in a blood bank?
So there are two types of antibodies. If everybody wants to listen to this, there are two types of antibodies: B cell and T cell. B cell are disappearing very fast.
Okay.
T cell antibodies are staying for long. This is why I'm saying that some antibodies will disappear fast, some will not disappear. T cell antibodies will produce good antibody titers. B cell will last very short time. So therefore, when you go to donate a plasma, you check your antibody titer. Now you cannot know what antibody you are having. Either you are having B cell immunity or your T cell immunity. That you cannot check as of now. But T cell antibodies. So jiska, for example, for me, I think I've got the T cell antibody response. Therefore, my antibodies have lasted for so long.
Okay.
It depends what antibodies you have, T cell or B cell. Dr. Nayana Joshi, Dr. Vaishali Surve, Dr. Tarannum, Dr. Prakash Patil, Dr. Mansi Doifode, Dr. Mohan Bok. Anybody wants to ask question, you can ask. This is a discussion from both sides, not only from me. So we discuss about CADA, we discuss about plasma antibodies, we discuss all the GI symptoms. So out of 100% patients, I am getting 90% are CADA-induced problems. Only 10% are post-COVID diarrheas or appendicitis or cholecystitis. Of my OPD, 90% are these. Not only CADA-induced, gastritis because of several reasons. Stress, anxiety, watching news again and again. So good thing is to control this acidity which you are getting frequently. You split your meals into 6 parts. Eat very healthy food. Eat lot of salads and fruits. Drink lot of water. Spicy oily food to be restricted. Cardamom, pepper to be restricted. Masalas, outside food, commercially made food, all should be restricted. That itself will cure you. Do some yoga, meditation, nature walk, and that's how your anxiety will go down, and that's how your acidity will go down. I am not blaming the CADAs, but there are other multiple reasons of acidity which are getting aggravated in this period, pandemic period.
So, sir, with the start of restaurant, the acidity is going to be aggravated further.
With the start of restaurant,
I would like to know, sir, what are the presenting symptoms? You said, what will be the presenting symptoms? So we will be. This was the diagnosis, but what were the presenting symptoms?
Okay, I'll answer Dr. Snehal Thakkar first. So restaurants are having a limited menu. If you go to a restaurant, they will not have the full menu working now. They are having a limited menu. They are also taking care of the hygiene. They are also taking care of all these things which I told you, spice, oil and everything. And they are having a restricted menu on their table. They will not serve you whatever is given in the pre-COVID time. So that's care that what they are taking, because they also have restricted staff to prepare all these things. And they have restricted business. 50% must be, there must be 50% occupancy or less. Coming to Dr. Rajendra Kadavkar, symptoms are severe crampy abdominal pain or constant pain not relieved by antacids, painkillers, severe diarrhea, vague pain which is not consistent to what you normally see in the practice, fever, vomiting, sometimes blood vomiting or blood in stools. These are the presenting symptoms of this, mainly vascular problems which we are facing in this COVID pandemic of the GI tract. So vascular, I mean to say vascular thrombosis or ulcer bleeds, ulcer perforations, severe appendicitis, severe cholecystitis.
So what?
Yes, sir.
what will be your preferred drug, like whether just a H2 receptor blocker or PPI or just plain antacid or antacid with
So I always use a PPI, and if there is vomiting, I use PPI with a Domstal combination and one syrup, either Paracet or Sucrafil, which can coat the ulcers.
which drug from PPI?
Yes, sir.
Which drug from PPI group? Omeprazole, esomeprazole, pantoprazole.
I personally don't use omeprazole because I find omeprazole is a very old drug. 1985 it started. So a lot of people are not doing well with omeprazole. I am using pantoprazole, and better is rabeprazole molecule with Domstal combination. But Domstal has to be stopped in 10 to 15 days, because what Domstal will do, it will start causing lactation in females because it stimulates prolactin secretion. So you have to stop the decombination very fast. 10, 12 days, 15 days, you should be over with the Domstal combination and switch to plain PPI. I never use Rantac because Rantac has known to cause some side effects. So I never prescribe Rantac. I better use PPI. Gives a good response and also gives a long-term response. Say it works for at least for 12 hours and has minimal side effects, especially plain PPI. And always use a syrup. If you are suspecting ulcers, just use a syrup called Paracet or Sucrafil, which will coat the ulcers so that your PPI dose can come down. You can use single PPI, and 3 times you can use Sucrafil syrup or a Sucrafil O or a Paracet DS or a Paracet O, 2 tablespoons 3 times a day. Diet is very important, not only medicine. Diet is very, very important.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, one question. Sir, as you said, PPI, can we give continuously PPI?
So continuously you can use PPI, but only plain pantoprazole or rabeprazole, not with the D combination, or not with the levosulfuride, or not with the IT etopride. Use plain PPI for long term. 1 tablet a day causes no harm. Till date, there is no study which has said that PPI causes cancer. No. At the most, it can cause some atrophic gastritis and vitamin deficiencies or iron deficiencies, but it has not. There are no severe side effects associated with PPI.
How long we should give?
We can give for 1 or 2 months safely. What you can tell the patient, you start using twice a day, then shift to once a day in the morning. Morning dose is very important. And then you start using alternate day, or when you have symptoms on day-to-day basis. If the day you have symptoms, we can use the PPI that day.
So there are old patients who are taking PPIs for about now 8 to 10 years continuously.
Yes, sir. I wanted to tell the same thing because this PPI they themselves take for many days, sir. So actually, how many days we should give or continuously let them take?
Because they are always on Ecosprin or Clopidogrel, or they have stents in place, or they are on some lot of medicine list. So 1 PPI in the morning before breakfast, it should be given empty stomach. Does no harm to the patient, can take lifelong if necessary.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
In prescribing a PPI.
Very vital advice, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Plain PPI, and as far as possible, pantoprazole, rabeprazole with a syrup at the most, maybe a Digene syrup which contains some anesthetic jelly in that, Digicaine, Algel, which has some anesthetic properties. They get severe pain because of the ulcers, so this will go and coat the ulcers.
Thank you, sir.
Your PPI requirement will come down.
But can we suggest as it is necessary that they can take, they can break down and they can take also?
You can safely prescribe 1 tablet in the morning before breakfast for 2-3 months. No harm in doing that.
Okay.
There are no drug interactions of PPI. There are very, very few drug interactions. So drug interactions are more with Rantac and not with PPI. Rantac will interfere with the drugs. So your dose requirements may change, but not with PPI. So anybody wants to ask anything? Dr. Malpure, Dr. Batija, Dr. Andive, Dr. Mota, Dr. Priyanka Mota. A lot of people have joined.
Yes, we have had a very successful session, sir.
So I'll share this presentation. Once I am done with this, I'll take all your emails from my team, and everybody of you will definitely receive this presentation. No doubt about that. We'll make an effort to see that you receive this presentation, and I'll get all your numbers from the team and store them. And if you have any other further queries later, also you can connect with me. Even if you want to ask me anything which has been left out in this presentation, you can still connect with me.
Right. So I think we can wind up now, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Friends,
Thank you, everybody, for your nice.
Thank you, sir. Very informative lecture. Very
After
vital tips.
Yeah, after 2 weeks, I'll plan some other lecture for all of you. Some other topic, mostly related to COVID, but some other system.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Thank you for joining,
Thank you,
everybody.
sir.
Giving your precious
Thank you
time
very
for this.
much.
Thank you, sir. Very informative lecture.
Very
Thank you.
informative and
Thank
productive
you.
session.
I'm pleased.
And I think it has been the usual story, because any session, any interaction with Dr. Sachin Wani has always been like this. Sir, whether we are sitting in some hotel or we are sitting at our home, but sir is equally at ease and equally willing to provide all the information and all the tips that he has been doing all the while. So thank you.
I hope we meet a one-to-one CME in near future. Maybe next
Yes,
2 or
sir.
3 we do a
Yes, sir.
one-to-one CME. So
Yeah.
we connect better.
Yeah.
Thank
and,
you.
Friends, one thing I would like to point out here is that although today's CME was a virtual CME, but Curia
Yes.
Hospital has planned a real gift for all the participants today. And
Okay.
you can collect these gifts from us committee members. I'm just reading out the names of the people from whom your area you can collect these gifts, starting from TDMP President Dr. Shashank Pawar, Dr. Mota, myself, Dr. Snehal Thakkar, Dr. Hemant Wankhede, Dr. Asif Pochi, Dr. Dhananjay Dangat, Dr. Maria Ashirwadam, Dr. Poonam Pawar, Dr. Panna Thakkar. All these people, depending upon the area in which you are practicing or convenient, you can contact these people and collect your gift from these people. So, although as I said, the CME was virtual, but the gift is definitely going to be real, and you are going to be rewarded. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hospital, for conducting this CME. Thank you for the efforts. Thank you, Snehal Thakkar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mota sir. Thank you.
Always a joy. Always a joy to be
Thank you,
with you,
Pochi
sir.
sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So we are ending this session now. So thank you, everybody, for attending the session. And thank you, Dr. Sachin Wani, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye. Goodbye, everybody.